Welcome back, friends and fight fans, to your favorite source for mixed martial arts knowledge, breakdowns, recaps, all that good stuff. Welcome to another episode of The Fight Plug, where we will be breaking down this upcoming UFC Fight Night Paris card, headlined by heavyweights Ciryl Gane and Tuivasa, and co-headlined by Robert Whitaker and Marvin Vettori. But before we get into that, we have to do some quick reactions. We got to react to some of what went down this past weekend on Saturday, I think it was. One FCs or one championships. I always call them one FC, but they're not actually called one FC. It was Friday. That's right. Their debut on Amazon Prime, which was pretty cool. I only caught the main event. And I know you were pretty stoked about some of those Muay Thai fights that they were going to be having. Did you manage to catch any of those, and what did you think?
No, as a matter of fact, they had events in the morning, like on regular Singapore time, which was pretty fucking wild. Especially like we have some pretty crazy, like just there's fighters out of Hawaii or like fighters that are like half and then half Singapore, half from like mixed race fighters, and they're out there, and it was pretty awesome. They really know how to fucking put an event on, and hearing Michael Chavello is always fun for me, just because I enjoyed K1 and Dream and all, he's done Ryzen and all those other ones too. So Rich Ace Franklin isn't very good at commentating.
Was that him commentating? I didn't even notice that.
Yeah, he's on there.
Trippy.
The dude, the Dragon, he's really good. But and then Chavello did the morning one, because I've been doing this thing where I've been waking up earlier to go to the gym, so I was up at like 4:30, and then I put on YouTube just to like whatever, and it's like I think it was like 160 or something like that, like their regularly numbered event, and it streams live on YouTube for free, and I was like, let's fucking watch it, and it was just like, wow. And it was Christian Lee, or Angela Lee's brother, I think he was like the main event, and he fucking just showed the fuck out with like knees to grounded opponents. I think I sent you the link of it. It's just like, Jesus fucking Christ, dude. It's just like, so like, because you're so used to seeing, and I'll watch one every now and then, mostly for like, I'll watch a replay, like a one FC replay, because they're fucking Muay Thai, especially like their Muay Thai bantamweight, their Muay Thai featherweight is just that is insane. There isn't a, you can go like, what is like the top, like the bantamweight in UFC, MMA is pretty dope, right? Lightweight is pretty wild, right? I think like if you were just to look for excitement and just like entertainment factor, the bantamweight and like featherweight Muay Thai in one FC is like, you have to watch every fucking fight. They're fucking crazy. That's especially like full Muay Thai rules. And then they've got these like Super Bond and Super who's on the last card. These guys are fucking insane.
I was just tripping out on Superlek's name. Superlek got moved 9. He has a 9 in his last name, and
but they're fucking they're wild. And then they're from that Banchemek, that White Lotus style from Thailand, where they were like the fucking the king of Thailand had to like intervene because like the predatory like practices that some of these gyms use, where they like sign like Buakaw. They're basically in that camp with Buakaw, where back in the day, I guess these gyms would find these kids. That's why they get like 200 and what was like Superlek's like 230 and like 65 or like some crazy fucking
the records
thing.
Are insane.
Yeah, and well, these gyms they get these kids out of like extreme poverty, and then they train them like, okay, well, you can live here and you can train and we'll feed you, but we make like a crazy ass percentage of all income, and they make it until like you die, and like wherever you go
till the wheels fall off.
Yeah, and if you open a gym, if you fucking go and get a job at some fucking car dealership, like we want our cut. Like we hook you up, and they give their family like some sum up front, And then it's like, okay, here's, I couldn't even imagine how much it is. Some of these guys were like they're saying they're getting like Super Bowl gets like $20 a day or something like that.
Damn.
And it's like, what in the fuck? And he's like literally like one of the greatest strikers on the planet, and he's like making $20 a day, or getting $20 a day. And I know I'm fucking up the story, but I know the precedent was sent like way back as far as like Buakaw was this insane national hero, uh, one of the first like Thai fighters to like really like make it in K1, and he was like attached to this gym. And they're like, nope, you're gonna pay us. This is how, and this is what's gonna happen, and we really don't care. And I guess the president, or I think the president's son, or the king, I guess not even the president, it's like the king's son, like came in and like they went to like whatever their version of parliament or their lawmakers, and like had to like break that shit apart, and like they gave him his own gym. And so a lot of these guys like have gone to that model now where they're like they have their own gyms and they help get these, but it's still like an ongoing thing where it's like these predatory, they get these kids and then they throw them in that lupini, that like King's Holiday, the monkey where like the monkey castle where they fight for like days on end.
Mm-hmm.
They just make these kids fight for cash, and they treat them like shit. There's a documentary that like really got me into that I saw like years ago that was narrated by Jason Statham, and they showed like there's like these 8-year-old kids, 9-year-old kids, and they lose, and they take them to the back, and they're just yelling at them and wailing on them and hitting them, and it's just fucking wild. It's like insane abuse that these kids go through. So I don't know why we're like,
I'm trying to
just
look.
ask me like a fucking super simple question.
I'm trying
But
to
like,
look up. It's Thai boxing: A Fighting Chance. That's the name of the documentary.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's a good one, dude,
narrated
and
by Jason
I would
Statham.
fucking watch it. It's pretty fucking insane, and
I'll
just to
definitely.
see, yeah, put that in the rotation, dude. That's
That's
a good
going on
one.
the watch list for sure. Yeah, that's a lot to take in. I mean, when
Yeah,
we think about like the fighters' rights here and the problems that we have with predatory contracts in the UFC, like it just
yeah,
goes to show there's always someone
it's worse.
further
Yeah,
down the ladder that's getting shit on even more.
right.
So yeah, disrupt the Muay Thai industry. Down with combat sports.
Yeah.
No.
No, it's just, but I guess for me, I think, and I think that's the one thing that they do better than any other organization is their Muay Thai right now is like fucking, it's just class. Like I really don't see any other organization that does it the way they do, especially like the 4 ounce gloves and the cage.
Yes.
That's pretty fucking crazy.
Question for
Uh,
you, since you
yeah.
watch more Muay Thai than I do, and I mean you've
Hmm.
seen a bit more of one than I have. I don't really watch too much of their programming.
Yeah.
Is it kind of trippy, or does it throw you off a little bit, or does it seem like it impacts the fight for these Muay Thai fighters to be fighting in that circle cage or in a cage period versus a ring?
I think it used to when it was first kind of getting off the ground, and you would watch it and you'd see some like the older time guys that would go in there and do it. Um, but and then one had events too where there would be a ring, and then there'd be their circle. So you would watch to the left and to the right. They used, and then they just fully integrated it now. And then they even have regular kickboxing too, where they use the bigger gloves. Um, and so they don't just use the 4 ounce gloves; they use the bigger gloves. But I haven't really seen any difference. I think the one thing that the ring is just a lot bigger, and then
Mm,
these guys can get on their bike, especially in Muay Thai where uh, there's just notoriously slow starters
yeah,
where they can kind of like navigate through the ring or move around, or with the cage they're like they get, and they actually like leverage, they can leverage like shots off the cage sometimes, or back a guy down, and there's not as much like give,
yeah.
to back against the ropes or back away. So that's pretty cool to see.
That is
And
interesting.
I'm
Yeah.
backing up trying to show like leaning against the ropes, and we're doing it not only.
It never ends. Yeah. Good point about there being less opportunities for like the rope a dope type stuff.
Yeah,
But also no, like none of those 90-degree corners that they're used to in a standard ring. So yeah,
right.
I can imagine it does impact, or it takes a little bit of adjustment to fix the footwork, figure out how to cut off a cage or cut off a circular cage. It is circular, right? Or am I getting it
Yeah,
mixed
it's a
up?
circle.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because it's I know it's Bellator that it's a hexagon, I believe. Yeah. But anyways, let's go to the top of the card. Let's talk about the main event for that, which was where we saw Demetrius Johnson rematch Adriano Moraes. Adriano took Demetrius's belt. Demetrius was their bantamweight champion. He was 3-0 in one since he had been traded by the UFC for Ben Askren. And he dropped that title.
How fucking wild is that to even fucking think about, dude?
It's some real butterfly effect shit for sure. He lost the title in kind of catastrophic fashion. He took a knee to the face while he was grounded, and like we all know, that's legal in ONE FC. But he said it himself. Like it is easy to look at that. You have that Leonardo DiCaprio mean moment where you like point at the TV. It's like he didn't know. That's where they found the chink in his armor. Because before that, I mean, Mighty Mouse had been looking unstoppable. He returns the favor to Adriano Moraes. It takes him 4 rounds to do it versus Moraes' 2 rounds in their previous fight. He gets a clean feint into a right cross and follows it up with a flying knee as he like stalks Adriano Moraes as he's like stumbling and falling back towards the cage and just slumps him. It was a walk away flying knee KO. It was just really nasty, a work of art. I got to ask you, are you back on the bandwagon with everybody? Like everybody's talking about Mighty Mouse right now and talking about how great it would be to see him back in either the flyweight or the bantamweight division of the UFC. He was always this good. He never fell off. Are you sipping the Kool-Aid? Are you ready to jump back on board? Do you want to see him back in the UFC? And not to say that he's going to come back anytime soon, but will people forget about Demetrius Johnson in another few weeks like they did before?
Yeah, and it's unfounded, and they shouldn't. I was never off the train, but I was never on it either. In a weird way, I just was like for certain athletes, even in sports, you just can recognize the greatness, and then you can see how awesome he is. But and it's not trying to be like shitty about it or whatever. It's just like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
he is one of the greatest fighters ever. I don't think there's any disputing that. Whether he is now in ONE champion in ONE or when he was the champion in the UFC, and I mean, it doesn't feel any different for me. His greatness has never really changed.
Yeah.
In my eyes. So, I mean, just for me, um, it was pretty. It's just pretty crazy to think like how far Henry Cejudo has fallen. Like that kind of put it into like context for me. It's like, God damn, dude, you used to be the man, Henry Cejudo. Like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, how did you let it get to where it's at now? Or to me, I guess I see Henry Cejudo as fucking clown shoes. Whereas at one point I thought this guy was, legit pretty like, and he was cringy and weird, and you can see like, okay, well, he's doing that. He's doing like a Kobe Covington type, um, putting that mask on to like sell fights, and it worked for me. It did.
Mm-hmm.
And now you see him like drunk backstage acting weird and shit.
Getting Sugar Sean O'Malley's
Yeah,
face.
and so like, does the fact that Henry Cejudo is the one that kind of ended his UFC reign, or Mighty Mouse's UFC reign, does that that's what leaves the weird taste in my mouth.
That loss
Now,
aged poorly for
yeah,
you.
it aged poorly, and I not that Cejudo didn't, you know, he didn't fucking show out in the cage, and was arguably the best, one of top 4 pound for pound in the world at the
Yeah.
time when he was reigning. So there's no, it's not that it wasn't his, but where he is now, and I mean, he's had mixed results training, but that just seeing, I guess, the optics of his coach and his trainer, and now his co-trainer, just some of that stuff now is just like, god damn, dude, like that's not even the same league as like the esteem you hold someone like Mighty Mouse and his camp in.
Hmm.
Those guys are fucking as professional as it gets over there, and it's as
Yeah.
clean as it gets. And then to see just such a weird like, and I think that's such a the juxtaposition we get with ONE FC and the UFC is that that horseshit doesn't fly over there, and that's just like the country of Singapore, like the shit that they do there, that just doesn't fly there. Shit like that just doesn't fly, and so where
The troll,
it's
they
something,
haven't had the proliferation of troll culture, and people aren't
yeah,
like going and rushing out to the ticket box to
yeah.
yeah, to buy into that.
Yeah, and like a guy like Keanu Suba who fought their big guy there in Singapore, which is Amir Khan. So their big like he's like their Michael Jordan as far as like MMA goes, and he had been on a downside, and then he knocked the shit out of Amir Khan in the morning card. He's like the and he stepped up to the mic, and like the first words out of his mouth was like, "I respect the country of Singapore. I respect everybody in this." And then he's like, he's like just going off on uh, what's his name, Shatri. Why can't I remember his last name? It's such an easy last name
I
to.
think his last name is Chatri. No,
Is it
talking about the CEO or the
the
president of
CEO?
one.
Yeah, he's like I respect you. He's like looking at like scared, like I respect everybody here. He's like, fuck, dude, I just beat the shit out of fucking like you guys is Michael Jordan, dude. Like I'm fucking
Right.
so sorry. I
Oh,
have nothing but respect for this country. I have nothing but respect for this organization. I hope I can come back and do this again. And it's like, if I mean, 99 times out of 100, and most of the time, it's not going to be an American fighter to do that in America.
no, no, not at
And
all.
then they're going to be like, I don't know, fucking, you know, Salt Lake City's nice or whatever, but you're gonna get some wild ass shit. They're like, "Fuck you, motherfucker! You piece of shit! Where the fuck are you?" And it's like that can only get you so far. And to me, like I like both. I really like both,
Hmm.
especially with the Muay Thai, where that you get such a crazy respect. Like they do some wild shit, and they'll style on each other, but before the fight and after the fight, it's very unless it's,
They're
and
literally
then when you
obligated to do their ceremonial dance and
yeah,
stuff for every Muay Thai
yeah, the
fight too.
White
So
Crew,
it's easy.
yeah.
It's easy for that pro wrestling like heel act to have to go by the wayside when you still have to do that kind of shit. I
And
believe.
that's the
Anyways.
one thing is after that morning one was like, I think for like the one hardcores, I guess if I was like had to like put myself in a position from the outside looking in as to not definitely not one,
Mm.
um I was just like, oh shit, like I'm in thoroughly fucking entertained, and I haven't heard someone say "fuck you" or like
Mm.
fucking double fingers and fucking like, or like fucking drunk ass people in the crowd, fucking, you know what I mean? No Molly McCann all fucked up, fucking laughing, none of that shit. And then there's
Yeah.
no Jorge Masvidal, Leon Edwards backstage back there. Like there's no fucking way,
None of that.
and that's
No.
cool. And so it just like the juxtaposition of it for me, and I'm sorry we like went to go off on this
Yeah.
tangent,
It's all good.
but
Let's talk about it, man.
it was the one thing that really like struck me was like, damn, like I was entertained by pure output, like talent, matchmaking, the I guess the production value of it was just so fucking high level. And when you watch UFC, you think like, well, this is the pinnacle. Like I'm basically watching the Super Bowl every Saturday,
Hmm.
So what the fuck? And
Yeah.
then you watch something like that, which I do watch one, but mostly through the scope of like a replay, where if it's a really good Muay Thai fight, I will put it on, or if it's like the Bushesha who fought earlier, like I really like watching just to see how he's looking like in one, uh, or just there's other fighters too, and so when just to watch a whole fucking card and to watch two cards in a day, it's like damn, they go on straight production value
Mm.
and technique alone. Like there's no fucking manufactured like you fucking put it so well when you said it's WWE with real fights, and like it kind of like that horse shit kind of like, when you just kind of like, oh shit, like am I maybe the one that's a fucking idiot because I'm like so into that shit,
Yeah. I don't know. I think it's what Chatri Sityodtong is doing over there with one.
Yeah, Sityodtong, that's right.
Completely different flavor. And I take no credit for that too. I just Googled his name
You
to
looked
get it right.
up, yeah.
And it's always been like that.
It's Sityodtong, idiot.
And like even going back to everything else we've seen come out of Asian MMA, Dream, Ryzen, back into Pride, that wasn't really the stuff that sold. I mean, Pride definitely had, I think.
And they did the Pride intros in the beginning with like the drums and stuff.
The parade of fighters and everything.
Done. And then they come out and they're just like, yeah, let's fight us all. oh. And this is I was like, whoa. It was amazing.
This feels ritualistic. Yeah. And yet I think back to times in Pride when like Vanderlei Silva shoved Rampage and stuff like that. And they were always like getting into with each other, and the brawls that Shoot the Box would get into and stuff.
Yeah, and Crazy Horse in the backstage.
Exactly, yeah. Like those guys were always up to some shit, but it wasn't necessarily put like front and center by like Pride's marketing management. Like that, I feel like that kind of stuff got some people over on those fighters over in the West, but it wasn't necessarily what Pride or Japanese MMA in general was like trying to hang their hat on to market fights. At the end of the day, and we get why that's done here, especially with the really ridiculous over the top pro wrestling shit, is because people don't have the attention span. Like there's storylines in every fight, but are you really
Conor McGregor yak the fuck out throwing a fucking dolly through a fucking bus? Like,
and there's no portion of that.
Was it not? Who gives a fuck?
Yeah, and at no point of that did you not see his teeth throughout the entire ordeal. But yeah, like up and down any MMA card, there are storylines. But if you're coming into this and you don't watch regularly, if you're not a hardcore fan, you don't really know who to get invested in. And to like look someone up and be like, oh, this guy came from this kind of background, and like, oh, he just moved from his home country to the U.S. and his like finding himself and like getting familiar with the new gym and everything like that. Like that's to me, that's intriguing. Like when somebody is dedicating their life in that way for a sport that doesn't even really reimburse them very well.
Right.
But for some people, like you don't know. All you see is what the UFC shows you on the broadcast.
$250,000. He gave out $250,000 in bonuses, and the way that they did it was like they're doing the interview, and then he's like, "Hey," he's like, "Buchecha did it," and he was like, so he did this like crazy ass like long quote about, because one of his buddies had been killed, and he's like, "Oh man, it's been so hard," and then the guy goes, "Well, you just got." $50,000, and then he looked like the CEO's right there, like, "Here, $50,000, dude. You did great." And it's like, whoa, what? And then you see that real visceral fucking reaction to it.
Yep.
And it's like he gave out $250,000 on one card and just bonuses. And so it's like, what the fuck? Like, why can't you do that shit here? Like, what the, like, what is that about? And from top to bottom, and then that's on top of them winning, and so. But to be fair, on the other side, they had a lot of guys miss weight, and there was some real wonky shit with the hydration code and all that other stuff. And so
I just don't know. Like, yeah, especially if you get just invested enough to know what difference that kind of money could make for a fighter who has lived on the prelims, who hasn't even like broken into main cards. It's crazy. I was listening to The Fighter and the Writer, which is Damon Martins from MMA Fighting's podcast, and he was interviewing Stevie Ray, who just who beat Anthony Pettis twice, and talking to him about his plans, excited for the PFL, and talking about that potential $1 million payday, because he has to fight one more fight and win, and he'll win the $1 million. And he basically said, yeah, like those wins over Anthony Pettis, that's cool. They got me to where I am right now. Like they got me all this extra attention. But when I win that $1 million, those fights don't mean shit to me, because those fights were literally just engagement, like social media engagement or whatever. It's people getting to know me, but I can't pay my bills with that. Like that $1 million, like that's literally going to change me and my family's life, and it's going to open more opportunities for training and paying for more coaches and nutritionists and all that stuff. And it's like, it's different. We're out here like hustling for that kind of shit. The stuff that like you take for granted and think that we just kind of have in the back pocket because we're fighters or we're in this industry. It ain't there. It ain't nothing for free. It's not charity. So.
Right. And there's no one there. And then there's so little out of sponsorships now. I feel like that it's just been bled dry by that wonky ass fucking the way they do it with Venom in the UFC, that it's like, well, why would a high level sponsor really want to get involved? Because there's only so far they can go. So why are you going to pour all this money into it when he's going to wear someone else's product when you get in there? So.
Yeah, and the truth is, like, there really isn't as many MMA fighters as one would think that are really putting themselves out there consistently on social media to wear, like you said, like a high level like clothing brand or something like that is going to be like Nike. Okay, we're going to sponsor you, post our shit all the time. They might be posting regularly, but a lot of the like MMA fighters are gym rats. Like a lot of it is training and shit like that. Like what those types of brands want is you in their clothes, out in public, out like, you know, in the club and shit like that.
Yeah, if you're at the steakhouse getting your teeth knocked in, they want, you know, to make sure that your shirt is on cute. While TMZ's, you know, taking pictures.
Photoshop the blood out.
Yeah.
Let's transition to UFC Fight Night. Gane versus Tuivasa. The UFC returns to Paris. They're going to be at the, I don't even know if I'm saying it right, the Accor Arena. Not Acorn Arena. Accor, A-C-C-O-R Arena. 12-fight card. Not the deepest card, but there was a few fights that dropped off that I was excited about or they got moved around. Chukagian versus Ciryl, although that fight got moved. That fight got moved to 281 or 280. I don't remember. Darian Weeks versus Cedric Doumbé was supposed to be on this card, but that got called off.
Yeah, that one was such a fucking bummer, man, because I was excited for Cedric. That's one right there that is wild that they got him. I thought for sure he was going to win championship and was just going to fucking own ass. But that says a lot about why he chose the UFC, because like you can go, hey, there's kickboxing. It's right there, doc. If you want to do some MMA, go ahead and do it. And he's like, I think I'm good. I'll try this shit out. And it's like, that says a lot to me right there. It's like, no, well, aren't you a kickboxer? You can do it in 4-ounce gloves right here. Like, why not? You know,
let's not complicate this guy.
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and go to the UFC. It's like, because he would. I mean, that's for sure. That's like up and down. Like Cedric Doumbé is a fucking. And it's crazy that we're talking about him. It's so funny. Like we've never spoken about him. We both know who he is. I've seen a few of his fights and a lot of his interviews. For sure, his highlights. Anyone out there should really go check this guy fucking out. It's pretty fucking wild. But he looked for the love of everything. Like he looked like a fucking ONE FC, like I get like creative fighter, like a UFC 4. He's like a ONE FC creative fighter, dude. And he's just like, no, so it's like it's gonna look weird, but yeah, that would have been so cool if he was on this card.
Let's jump around with the order a little bit and talk about the co-main event before we finish off with the main event in a bit. Robert Whittaker, in his first bout since his loss in his rematch to Israel Adesanya in February earlier this year, returns. He is 23-6 versus the Italian Dream Marvin Vettori at 18-4, coming off of his win over Paulo Costa, which happened in October of last year in 2021. Not even early predictions for this fight. This fight is coming up this weekend. What was your take on this fight? Because this one kind of flew under my radar for a little bit, and I didn't actually even realize that. Like, I knew these guys were booked, but it was one of those deals where like I opened up the card and I was like, oh, that fight's happening this weekend. Holy shit!
Oh shit! Yeah. And it seems like Whittaker had just fought, but he really hasn't. And then I guess in this lead up, he was talking about, oh, I might go to light heavyweight, right? Isn't that something he said?
He's
Like, I
mentioned like,
might just end my
yeah,
career in light heavyweight, which we talked about. Like, he needs to move up. I think we talked about that in at the post for Adesanya and Whitaker. We talked about what's next for him, and it's like you need to change divisions. And I think he's even thinking about that. Um, the big takeaway for me is something that I looked at. It was like the only two losses that these two guys have in like 4 or 5 years is to Stylebender,
it's real
which
Adesanya. I
is
was
like,
just looking at that
yes,
too.
it's
Yeah,
like, what the fuck? That's pretty crazy. Marvin Vittori is like hard work, like personified, I guess, like faking it till you make it. Cause like, you just don't see that level of talent that will put someone over the top. For me, I mean, when I watch it, not to say that he's not good, he could 90% of the guys in the world in his weight class he would beat more than likely, but just that part that puts you over the top to championship level, you just don't really see it from him. And I think it's going to be like super evident for Whitaker this weekend. That's what we're going to see.
yeah. Marvin Vittori, a little too much of an all arounder for this fight. I feel
Yeah,
like for at least for like you said for Whitaker, somebody who you really have to exploit the weaknesses that Whitaker brings to the game, which are very few. If anything,
yeah,
I'd say one right now is that he's become, I don't want to say gun shy, but much more tentative, much more
yeah.
conservative with his output, and a bit of a slow starter is Robert
Is
Whitaker
that from
lately.
injuries maybe that he's carrying? Do you think he just doesn't want to like floor it because it's like I don't know where he's at body wise. He doesn't want to test his body out, or
You know, there was that issue where he had to pull out of one of his fights. I think he pulled out of a fight with, who was it? It was after his first Israel Adesanya fight. Well, anyways, there was a lot of talk about that. Apparently, his daughter had gotten sick or something like that, and
yeah,
he was going to be like donate, like they were going to do a spinal tap on him or some shit like that, or to
yeah,
donate platelets or something. And that all turned out to be kibosh. That wasn't the case. Where he
yeah,
actually did just need time off, because I know like
right.
Dana White was like praising him and stuff and saying like, yeah, no, whatever he needs, what he's doing, it's, I'm not going to talk about his business, but he's a stand-up guy. He take all the time that he wants. And it just turned out that no, it was just I don't know if it was mental or other injuries that he had himself.
It was like some type of weird hernia, right? That he had.
I don't know. I honestly don't remember. I know yeah, I think you're right. I think I do recall some kind of a hernia, because I don't think it was like a bone like break or something like that. But yeah, we're pretty much just speculating at this point.
It was like a lower abdomen hernia, like it was coming out of his body, like he felt like it was like every time he like would use the restroom or take a breath, like it was like coming out of his belly button or something like that.
Ooh, okay, then yeah, I could see that being an issue. Definitely worth calling a fight off.
Yeah,
You do have to wonder though, like we were talking about his pace and his more like conservative output. I he seemed to change that going into like for his fights going into this rematch with Israel Adesanya, because I got the sense that he knew that he couldn't fight Adesanya the same way he fought him the first time. Like he needed to
yeah.
just fight smarter and be more selective with his shots and find his openings. And so I kind of wondered, like now that he's got that second loss to Adesanya out of the way, is that all going to go out the window and he's going to be old Robert Whitaker and not have to worry about like, okay, I need to fight in a way that is conducive to me beating Israel Adesanya to get to another title shot, especially if he's already talking about light heavyweight. It does make me curious, like how different he might look in this fight, especially against somebody in Marvin Vittori, who, I mean, on paper shouldn't really be as much of a threat to him on the feet or in the wrestling department,
Yeah,
and because that's like one of the few things that I think is going to like stifle Robert Whitaker's output is the threat of a takedown. And Marvin Vittori is certainly no slouch on the ground. He's just more well rounded. He's not a guy who like describe Marvin Vittori's fighting style to somebody.
yeah.
It's
It's
like,
really. I mean, you put it perfectly, like just an all arounder, you know.
yeah, like 'cause there's some guys where he's like, okay, wrestler,
Yeah,
boxer, kick,
which is good, which you need, and it's gotten him far. You know,
mm,
it's gotten him very far, and that's the thing for me is, he's just more of a product of like super hard work and focus, and being insanely ugly, and and putting all that together.
Being sneakily handsome, I'd say.
Yeah.
And until he loses his fucking mind in a promo and like starts like opening his eyes real wide so you can like see the whites above his eyes, like in his pupils.
Yeah.
No, yeah. He's really good for sound bites, that Marvin Vettori. I love it.
He really is. Yeah. It's just, I think the top, and I'm not trying to step all over, the main, but
it's all right. It's got your footprints all over it, buddy.
Yeah. No, I think it's, I think these matchups are set up to kind of showcase the main and co-main event fighters, and kind of put them out or give them the best look possible, to really like entertain the crowd. I think that's, if I had to like put any ulterior motive as to why these matchups were made, I think that's what they were made for.
Only one of Robert Whittaker's previous 5 fights was scheduled for 3 rounds. Beside that, it's been 5 rounds for a while for him. Going back to his fight with Yoel Romero in 2017, that was a 5-round decision. Yoel Romero Part 2, that was a 5-round decision. Adesanya, his night was cut short on that one, but it wasn't because, it was still booked for 5. Do you think that this fight with Marvin Vettori being 3 rounds gives any kind of a edge or statistical advantage to Vettori that wouldn't be there if it was normally a 5-round fight that let's face it, Robert Whittaker's starting to become a little bit more accustomed to, being a guy who's like perennially in the mix at middleweight?
Maybe subconsciously for Marvin to think like, I can just fucking floor it and go hard as fuck and not have to worry about going on to 4th and 5th, that I can just kind of leave it all out there and more or less kind of like go buck wild, and throw more caution to the wind, knowing like, there's not going to be that dump, that crazy adrenaline dump
that's still
might
around
cost me in the championship. Because this, by all intents and purposes, this should be a 5-round, fight night main event, type of fight. So that's I think if you're going to draw any positive for that for any of the fighters, I think Marvin gets that. And Rob is, like you just pointed out, he's always been either in the main event in the championship fight, or he's defending, or however it is. So it's probably gonna be a little bit weird for him as far as like just being in there and knowing like, but that could work out for him too. Maybe he can just, it works both ways, he can go out and just throw more caution to the wind and throw some more strikes, or be more aggressive with his takedowns than maybe he would in a 5-rounder. I
am going to. Did you pick Robert Whittaker already? Like officially? Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I think I know Robert Whittaker should be the favorite here.
No.
And I'm going to pick Robert Whittaker also.
Yeah.
No, I can't. Okay. I can't pick Marvin Vettori. I can see a path to victory for Marvin Vettori.
Yes.
I feel like he can steal rounds. I'm curious to see what his wrestling can do against Robert Whittaker, and if he decides to try and clinch up with him. I'm kind of wondering, like, I feel like Marvin Vettori might be stronger than Robert Whittaker, just in the pure sense of like, hey, like if we're in the clinch against the cage, I can hold you here. And I kind of think that he could steal rounds, and if it ends up going to decision, I think like it could be closer than we're giving it credit for. But Robert Whittaker, when he's on, like few people can counter punch better
in the world.
Yeah,
on the entire planet. Like his counter striking is
amazing, going
crazy,
completely backwards too, just finding his mark.
Oh, right.
And we've seen a lot of examples where when Marvin Vettori tries to close the distance with his hands, it sounds like slander, but it could look a little bit like Juliana Pena.
Oh
Because
man, that's the word. That's I did not. I expected you to say some wild shit, but I
it,
did not. You're right, and I did not think about it like that. I try not to think about Juliana Pena's style or put that equate that to anybody else's because that's kind of gross. But god damn, like I
it's
did not expect you to say anything.
it's usually when it's in
But you're
motion
right.
and he's
Yeah.
coming forward. Like he can throw nice combinations. He's like a guy like you put him in front of a heavy bag. Like he has good fundamental striking skills and everything like that.
Right.
When his target is maybe has their back against the cage, and his counter striking is not horrible either. But yeah, when he's facing a guy who's not just going to be there in front of him, and it is going to like make him have to chase after them. That's where I feel like his hands really fall apart, and his head movement goes out the window too. And I think that's precisely the place where Robert Whitaker is gonna exploit those deficiencies, and probably put him out. I could see him putting Marvin Vettori away, even though Marvin Vettori is really, really tough.
He's a tough son of a bitch. A respectable and good goddamn fighter. Hey, thanks for coming out, but thanks again. We appreciate you. He's gonna do some cool shit with the schmo. That's gonna be great. Thanks again. Thanks again for being a weird fuck. And yeah, but
Marvin's never lost. He's only lost by decision. All four of his losses. He's never been
right.
finished. So I might be going out on the limb a little bit.
Hey, that's great. Thanks, Marvin.
That's fantastic.
There's very few. Never heard of him. There's very few guys who, to me, like as far as like when the fights get weird or when fights get like they turn into fights, there are very few guys that are able to keep their heads, keep heads, keep that high level technique, and keep and actually like use their opponent's aggression or whatever their opponent's doing and using it. And it's the karate style that that Whitaker has that does it. There's very few people who are able to it can get batshit crazy, whether that's through wrestling, your striking, your grappling. Whitaker keeps his head, keeps to a strategy, and will change the strategy to defeat what that person is trying to do to him. There are very few people on the planet in combat sports in general that can like on the fly like change and kind of like
It's funny
adapt.
It's funny that and interesting that you bring that up though and mention that about Whitaker too, because he is also facing like just pure delusion in Marvin Vettori also, who has like it's almost works in a different way. It's not based on discipline or like accomplishment or anything like that. It is just, no, I won, I'm coming, I'm taking everything. He thought he won the rematch with Ciryl Adesanya, which
that was
did
wild.
not at all.
That was a wild week after like listening to him explain that shit.
So very confident and a bit hard-headed is Marvin Vettori coming into this bout too, and that's kind of like it's almost like an immovable object versus an unstoppable force. When you mentioned that about like their mentality, because Robert Whitaker, he doesn't get jolted either. Like we've never seen him like anything that even close to resembling like mentally broken or anything like that. So that's sure to be an entertaining one for sure.
Yeah.
Now
or not. Or not. I think he might just kind of like counterpunch the fuck out of Marvin and kind of like be a step ahead. I see in and out pointing them and not getting too sloppy with like not letting things get too dirty, because in a 3-round, a 10-8 makes all the fucking difference too, where we're talking about whether it's a 5 or a 3. A fucking 10-8 where Rob makes a fucking mistake and slips and falls or takes a shot that he didn't expect and things kind of get wonky for him. Taking a 10-8 like in the second, that's like real weird, as far as like how the fight goes in the third. If he just took a 10-8 and it was weird and he's not hurt, but like it was obvious he got knocked down. So
you might be right. I guess I can't help but just throw out like generic like glittering fucking generalities when I'm talking about a fight that's coming. Well, I'm sure it's going to be exciting. You're probably right. Like there's chances for it to be boring no matter who wins this fight also, because like Vettori's only path to victory, I think, is closing that distance and clinching up and putting Whitaker's back on the cage. And it would be nice if he can take him down too, but I don't necessarily think that he has the wrestling to do
chance.
that.
Yeah, there's zero chance.
Yeah.
So a lot of people talk about his wrestling being so good, but it was like it was, but like
it's serviceable. It's not
bad.
It's good for what the middleweight
it's
division
definitely
is right
wrestling.
now.
Yeah, it's definitely wrestling.
Yep, those are double legs. That's a single. No, but also like if that version of Whitaker shows up, like you mentioned too, then his win method might just be to outpoint him, and both there's a path towards a boring fight for both guys, no matter who gets their hand raised.
Good point, dude.
Fingers crossed for a resurgence of old school fight finishing Whitaker. That would be nice. We can only hope for so much. In the main event, Ciryl Gane versus Tai Tuivasa. Ciryl Gane, this is his first fight back after he got his first loss, or suffered his first loss to Francis Ngannou, and he is challenging Tai Tuivasa. And Bam Bam is a man who's been on an absolute tear with 5 wins under his belt dating back to 2020, over names like Derek Lewis, Augusto Sakai, Greg Hardy, Harry Hunsucker, and Stefan Struve. Important to note that all of those fights were ended by TKO or KO. So yeah, there's a very dangerous man that is entering the cage with Ciryl Gane in a few days, and I want to ask you if it's going to matter one bit against I don't want to abuse the word elusiveness of Ciryl Gane, but certainly a guy who's not going to be there to be hit. What do you think about this fight?
It's just a style matchup to like showcase Ciryl Gane and kind of knock the shit off, or get the smell off. Like get the smell off of what happened with Francis Ngannou.
Could there be a better matchup for Ciryl Gane than Tai Tuivasa?
No, absolutely not. No chance. This is just it's so what is the word I'm looking for? It's just so transparent. Like you know exactly what they're fucking doing.
Mm-hmm.
And it works in their favor because Tuivasa's done such a good job earning this. So you can't really say he doesn't deserve it. It's not like they just he's off of, he's like 1-3 in his last 4, and they're just throwing him out here based on he didn't look terrible, and he's knocked out, he's run through whatever it is that the UFC's throwing out there at heavyweight right now.
He's done the work in his ascent through the heavyweight division. He certainly hasn't fought the top guys. He really didn't break into the top 10 level guys until Derek Lewis, which is his most previous fight. Before that, there was your Greg Hardys, like I mentioned, Stefan Struve, who by that time was plenty shop worn. But in the method that he's been doing it, the way he's been putting guys away, it's
he
really
can only go out and do his job. He can't.
Yeah,
he can't. Yeah, he can't do anything more than what they ask him to, and he does it to a T. So
it's kind of a win-win fight for the UFC, though. As unlikely as it is for Tai Tuivasa to get a win here, I at least we think. I don't want to count him out. He's an exciting fighter. Certainly hits hard, but it's hard to not think that Ciryl Gane really stood in front of Francis Ngannou for the better part of 5 rounds, and by midway through the second round, the fear was gone. And I'm not talking about the fear in Ciryl Gane. I'm talking about the fear in me as somebody who's rooting for Ciryl Gane, thinking okay, you're good. You have great footwork for a heavyweight and all that great stuff, but are you really going to stand in front of Francis Ngannou? And he did. And it really showed that all it takes is kind of skill to negate that just fucking blind rage, incomprehensible power of Francis Ngannou. And I don't really think that he's going to have any problem with anything any of the looks that Tai Tuivasa is going to give to him. But if Tai Tuivasa were to pull it off, this is a man who's been doing the work. 5 finishes in a row, like I mentioned, and then for every one, this man jumped on the cage and drank his shoeys and drank multiple shoeys full of people's fucking toe jam and spit and like warm beer and stuff. He's endeared himself to the fan base all over the world, and so I think like you really can't go wrong if you're the UFC scheduling this heavyweight fight. And I was also going to mention too, like I'm kind of surprised. No, okay, not super surprised because they are heavyweights after all. But you mentioned like Whitaker versus Vettori could have been the headliner of this card. Like that fight should have been 5 rounds, and instead we end up with a heavyweight fight being 5 rounds, and that would be something that would kind of worry me sometimes because heavyweight fights often don't need to go 5 rounds, and if you let them go 5 rounds, there's also the potential for them to get real fucking sloppy and watching two guys gas. On the upside,
this is a great point that you're making right now, dude.
Let these guys fight 3 rounds. They don't. This doesn't need to be a main event.
They could almost flip flop. I think if it wasn't the fact that they just really need Ciryl Gane right now, you can tell they really need him, man.
This fight it has
a leveraging chip against Stipe and John and.
Yeah, because this fight definitely has way more implications for the heavyweight title picture of the UFC, and I mean that's another like good thing for Ciryl Gane too about it being 5 rounds is if either of these men are going to gas out, it's going to be Tuivasa, and that's going to lead to a more likelihood of Ciryl Gane actually pursuing a finish versus just a dominant decision. Because Ciryl Gane's definitely has the power, but you really get the sense that he's one of those guys like who may have the power because the dude is straight jacket, but it seems like he's like, I just want to touch you, I just want to put hands on you. I'm not really putting anything behind any of this. I'm just going to wear you down, death by 1,000 cuts, which is rare at heavyweight. It's not something we're used to seeing. So like it's fascinating to me.
Yeah, he's definitely a lot more like a middleweight fighter in a heavyweight fighter's body. To me, is what he looks more like he would be at home in the middleweight division, skill wise, than where he's at now.
So our picks are exactly the same. We are both picking Robert Whitaker to defeat Marvin Vettori, and we are both picking Ciryl Gane to defeat Tai Tuivasa. I think that heavyweight fight's going to be entertaining, and it's going to be one of those two where it, and that's not just me generically like being like, yes, these will be entertaining fights. I think it's a fight that like can even be a little bit bad and will still be entertaining to me because the top of the heavyweight division has been so stagnant for a while now. Like we just don't know who is fighting who. There's rumors about John or John tweeting and deleting shit about like how he wants to be back by the end of the year. And fucking Stipe Miocic might as well just be on another planet. He's off fighting a fucking fire somewhere.
Give these guys some more time, man.
No, fuck more time, dude. Let's get rid of him. So yeah,
and Ngannou doesn't even seem like that guy's still alive. He was in like a commercial for The Rock's shoes, I guess. They're like, hey, you want to get involved in that? What the fuck what's really going on here?
They've all done at the top of that division. They've all done a pretty piss poor job of keeping themselves relevant. I mean, John is always going to be relevant by default, but it's because he's John Jones and he's relevant for his bad behavior,
Yeah, that's the only thing keeping him around right now.
Yeah, I think there are fans of this sport who've never seen Stipe Miocic fight at this point.
There are quite a few who have just like have heard rumors of it, like, hey, this guy got folded up by Francis, and like that's like the lasting thing that you have in your mind is Stipe Miocic got fucking rolled up and folded back by Francis and Gane.
Stipe in DC, but more Stipe because he's the one that's still fighting. Also, we're just a victim to the UFC's penchant for immediate rematches and just like consecutive trilogy fights. Also,
sure.
I think like unless all of their fights are flat out classics, which none of their fights were bad between Stipe and DC, but like you definitely you can burn people out, especially if these guys are like more towards the end of their careers, which they both are. Even though Stipe's still fighting, you get that kind of situations like that where they also tend to not age very well. In a situation like this, like Stipe's most recent wins are 2 wins over DC, and that guy's retired. And so, a new fan
has been retired for like a long fucking time.
Exactly. So for a new fan looking in, they might be looking at Stipe's record and being like
pre-COVID wins, dude.
Yeah. And it's like, what's so special about this guy? And I know I shouldn't be arguing on behalf of like a casual fan who hasn't been there to see the fights, but I think the UFC, that's who they cater to. And I don't think
we need the casual fan. You need the casual dollar.
Exactly. Yeah. That's
without the casual dollar, they're the only ones buying pay-per-views.
Yeah. So I don't know. I feel like it's a little bit of a blind spot for the UFC where they're still kind of hanging their hat on Stipe, unless they really just want to keep him around, because like it really seems like they want to make or give John the opportunity to make his splash at heavyweight with a Stipe Miocic fight. And I just keep thinking, like, honestly, there's no worse person that you can do it with. Like, I think for a lot of the fan base, Stipe's like out of sight, out of mind. And despite that, he still has a chance to beat John. We've talked about this, honestly. I think we've talked about this potential fight for a long time too. I'm not sure what we were going off on it. We were talking about heavyweight MMA, but yeah, I think if you want to get John over in the heavyweight division, just have him fight literally anybody.
Yeah, he can just fight anybody at this point. I mean, why not? And they can get away with it and say like, hey, he hasn't fought in a few years. It's a brand new weight class for him. He's not a champion in any other class. I could see if he was still light heavyweight champ and he needs to fight a championship fight. There's no reason you should get a tune-up while holding another belt. But none of that makes sense. And he's literally like he shouldn't be on a pound for pound list. He is, but he shouldn't be. There's really no reason to have him on anything like that. So
yeah, 3 years away from the sport too. Yeah, it's kind of tough to keep him in those discussions, especially when some of the fights that he was putting on before he took his extended absence from the sport were some of like by consensus his worst. Like we've seen the decline starting, and it's hard to imagine that he's going to like be better than that by like big volumes. Like he needs to grease the wheels for sure. So like literally just give him anybody. He doesn't need to jump right into the very top of the division because he's going to be there with one win anyways. Like that's what they're going to do with him. Let's open up the rumor mill and report on some current events in the world of MMA and combat sports in general. I think the most noteworthy thing that's coming out, or at least in the rumor mill, is that apparently Jake Paul versus Anderson Silva is being targeted for sometime in October. Do you buy or sell that Jake Paul would ever actually set into a boxing ring with Anderson Silva?
I buy it, and I buy that it's going to be the most like transparent job on the planet as far as like Anderson taking a dive for cash.
You're going to call it dive? He's predicting a dive. You think so? I don't think he would.
Anderson Silva's going to take a dive for cash, a lot of cash.
I feel like I got to refute that. I feel like if Anderson Silva was going to start to go out to do the JOB, he would have done it a lot earlier in his career. I really don't see the point in him starting to do it
earlier in his career. He was going to do it for what, 150 racks, maybe.
I mean, when he was on top of the world and incredibly dominant, if he could predict his own loss at any point during his title reign, he could. It depends on how the fix is. You know what I mean?
I'm saying Jake Paul is going to give him money to take a dive.
I know
Jake Paul and his team.
But I'm talking about what you said about when would Anderson Silva have done that? Like what would have been the point of fixing one of his fights or taking a dive when he was in the UFC where he wasn't making that much? Is that what you mean? Like he's gonna make like 100?
Like the shit was real. No one's gonna give a fuck if he beats Jake Paul. It's not gonna add to anything. Why? Who gives a fuck? could he retire now and take all this money? And they say, hey, that was a job. So you guys fucking paid for that. So I mean, if he jobbed it against fucking Weidman, like, okay, well, what the fuck, dude? What's going on with you?
Uh,
What's going on there? Or if he jobbed it against, fucking Vitor or somebody, like, wow, why? I mean, at least now he's like, dude, I got $3.5 million, $4 million, and who gives a fuck? It
right.
was Jake Paul.
Well, that's why I get
So
annoyed with some people who are really, really quick to call things a fix or anything like that, or
yeah,
call stuff rigged, because it's like, okay, pause and
yeah,
explain who benefits financially from whatever XYZ fight that a fan is crying that was rigged or fixed or anything like that. Where I could see like a point, and going back to like what we were saying about with Anderson Silva, when he was at his most dominant, if he would have somebody bet for him on against himself,
you're talking about
and
too much work and too much like conspiracy
oh
shit
well, I'm
for
not the one
someone
who
who's not.
said he's ever fixed a
No,
fight
but
or like will
what
fix a
I'm
fight.
saying is you're putting too much thought into like he would have to do too much to fix it. Whereas with Jake Paul, I mean, literally the fight's probably going to get they like some of these fights get sanctioned as like events, like not as
Uh-huh.
far as like performances.
Yeah,
Do you know what I'm saying?
sports entertainment.
Whereas he would literally have to break the fucking law to job a UFC fight. He'd have to break federal law, especially at the time when he was fighting. That's federal. That's federal time. There's guys like doing time or have there's guys in the NFL doing time for betting on games that they didn't even fucking play in.
Dana
So
White,
you mean
that's fucking illegal soundbite. Yeah,
yeah? So I mean, okay, the risk he could have taken to like tarnish, and at the time he was, the greatest to ever fucking do it. Now it's like Jake Paul's gonna be like, "Hey, dog, here's $4 million. In the seventh, you go fucking down." And he's like, "Repeat it. I want to hear you say it." Oh, in the seventh, I go down. And like, okay, there you go, thanks. And then it's like, it was WWE. What'd you guys expect?
I
That-
I think that you're worried that Anderson Silva is going to get knocked out, and you're
No, I'm not. I'm not
you're
at
already
all.
calling the fixed. Do you think that?
Not at all.
Okay, I'll ask you this, so we can like get because once we start talking about fixes or anything or like
Hmm.
dives, you can't really talk about the fight anymore.
We're talking
So
about a YouTuber,
I'll ask you this.
NFT. The guy rips people off with NFTs. They go through fucking Japanese suicide forests. Like, we're not
All
talking about.
team all team piece of shit is Jake Paul. Yeah, I'm not a
Yeah,
fan of either of the Paul brothers whatsoever.
right.
I would be happy if they were not involved in any kind of combat sports at all. But I'm asking you, if
Yeah.
Jake Paul and Anderson Silva box in a
Hmm.
sanctioned boxing match that is not like guaranteed, not rigged. Anderson's not taking a dive for money. It's just a boxing match, and whatever format that Jake Paul boxes in. I don't know. They go like 8 rounds, right? 3 minute rounds.
Yeah.
Who would you pick?
Anderson Silva.
Anderson
If I
Silva.
had it within all like if someone looked if it was like there was a 100% guarantee that there was no fuckery going on in this, that Anderson is training to in a boxing match, and like what is that like what is that, what is the fucking rule said it's Queen, what is it, Queensboro, what is it?
Oh yeah, Queensberry rules.
Yeah, Queensberry rules.
Uh,
And it's like that's what we're doing here. Then Anderson Silva would outpoint him. He would out just completely fucking box this guy's face off.
thank you, because yeah, Anderson Silva should wipe the fucking floor with
No,
Jake
he would
Paul.
box his fucking face off. And watching him before he back in the day, we used to watch Anderson Silva boxing when he was younger. He
Mhm.
looked absolutely. He looked like he should be boxing. He looked like a professional boxer.
Absolutely could have
And
made a career
and
of it.
and yeah, and uh, in these recent events that he's had, he's looked like a great fucking boxer. He looks amazing. He looks good. He looks like, I mean, for someone his age who's
Yeah,
gone through what he's gone through with the injuries that he has, you know,
for the
he
level of
looks great.
competition that he's faced.
The level of
It's all
competition that he's gone through, yeah,
it's
he
all
looks good.
relative.
Now, someone's going to give him close to $5 million, and he's going to get. He's just who cares? And that's probably. I guarantee you, at this point in his life, that he needs that. He needs that money. I mean, why take? What's he really going to get? What's he really going to get out of it if he knocks the fuck out of Jake Paul? Nothing. You should have. You're Anderson Silva.
I will push back on the he needs that comment, because I don't
Mm.
think that he does. I don't follow Anderson Silva's personal life too much, but I follow Khalil Silva, his son, on Instagram, and I follow Anderson too, and I see them training and everything like that, and I see the kind of house that they live in and the kind of the area of Southern California that they live in, and they look like they're doing all right. I think Anderson Silva has got money in the bank. I think he's probably made a pretty penny off of the boxing matches that he's had so far. I would doubt it if Anderson Silva needs this kind of like a payday to where he's going to go and do the job for Jake Paul. But we'll see. I mean, we'll have to see when that fight happens. It looks like it's targeted for October 29th. So Brandon's prediction is that there will be a performative aspect to this fight that doesn't have anything to do with fighting. So
if there wasn't, Anderson Silva would just like outpoint this guy and take him to a decision, and it wouldn't be entertaining at all.
I think
for most people.
Because another thing too, I think that there is, for one, even if Anderson is, if they are just going to fight and there's not going to be any fuckery, obviously there's going to be money in it for Anderson anyways, without having to throw a fight. There's also going to be some kind of a purse or negotiation, because I think if we're talking, like you mentioned, $5 million payoff, I would expect that they're probably going to be paying Anderson $5 to $6 million anyways, just to win the fight, just to fight. And then I also have to remember too, like, I doubt that they're doing show and win money or anything like that, just guaranteed money. So, and I think the rub, if Anderson Silva wants to continue boxing and keep doing what he's doing, he'd have to kind of like be selective about it. Like, how long does he really intend to box? But if he wants to, the rub off of beating Jake Paul to get into other types of like celebrity or kind of like fringe fights like this versus like personalities or older retired boxers and stuff like that, I still think there's a lot of upside in it for Anderson without having to job out to Jake Paul.
What's the downside of Jake Paul losing?
The downside of Jake Paul losing? I think, okay, I don't know if the jig would be up for Jake Paul if Anderson beats him, because this is definitely a fight where Jake Paul can say like, well, yeah, this guy's one of the fucking greatest of all time. You know what I mean? It's easy to turn around and be like, okay, yeah, everybody should have expected him to lose to Anderson. And I think his whole, I'm going to call out fucking retired wrestler, MMA fighters, or just other celebrities, I think that can continue with a loss to Anderson Silva. If he would have went out there and lost to the dude he was recently scheduled to fight, where they like just canceled that entire card, I think the gig would have been up at that point for Jake Paul and his boxing endeavors. I think people would have been like, all right, I'm done with this troll show of like amateur boxing. But I don't know. We'll see. I was listening to some.
I think there's just way too much. We're talking about like generational wealth that this guy's accrued for however he's fucking done it. That's like an insane amount of money. And if he goes out and fucking gets embarrassed, it's not going to look good for him in his other endeavors. It will fuck him up as far as like he can't go out and podcast. He's like one of these guys that he runs his fucking mouth. He's a troll type of dude.
Right.
So he will pay a backhanded amount of money to keep that up. And in my opinion, he's doing this like bum fights type shit to like the next level, where he's really fucking preying on these guys that are like at the end of their rope, at the end of their careers, at the end of it. And he's saying like it's an investment for him to pay these guys out, and they don't really, have anything to lose, whatever it is, however it goes with a loss. Like, who gives a fuck what Tyron Woodley and Ben Askren and all these other guys are fucking, who gives a fuck what they're saying? But I guarantee that money spends just as good if they would have fucking won.
I guess I just don't think that Jake Paul and the type of fan base that he appeals to, like, I don't think he needs to win. Like, I think it's in the same lane as like fucking Donald Trump, and it's just like, when you lose, lie and say you won anyways. Just fucking bullshit your way out of everything. I think that's a good point. I kind of feel like that's the general MO, and when we finally see him take a loss, I think that's going to be the way that he goes about it. I mean, even like when we saw his brother fight Floyd Mayweather, I mean, that was a exhibition match where they don't even announce a winner or anything like that. And this guy's like ringside saying like, "You just shocked the fucking world. You beat Floyd Mayweather." Nobody beat anybody, bud. Like they were just out there dancing for a payday. Like that wasn't even a fight. So like the mentality to it is like, I don't know. I think if he was really, really worried about Anderson Silva, possibly. But there's also like if it ever gets out that it actually was fixed or that he actually paid Anderson to take a dive, I think that does way, way more damage to his reputation than just losing a fight to Anderson clean. But I don't know.
I'm glad that we like can disagree on this kind of shit though, at least. Instead of we like agree on everything on like UFC, but we disagree on this stuff. It's just so performative to me. It's just so like, and then he deals in just like, in just snake fucking bullshit, and it's so I just don't put it past him. A lot of the weird shit Anderson had in his career, like it's not like we're talking about someone who has like this sterling reputation in the first fucking place.
He's cheated.
Yeah, he's cheated.
He's popped for steroids. Yeah.
The Forrest Griffin fight was very fucking weird. So it's just like I just don't put it past it either way.
See, I think the only thing that I might be a little concerned about is that if Anderson Silva were to get knocked out by Jake Paul, I'm worried that it might look like he threw the fight because of Anderson Silva's like
that's why I'm confident in saying
tendency
it,
to play,
because I can point it out. Like with the Tyron Woodley thing, they talk about like the see how he pulled his hand in and then Woodley put his head out and then he knocked him the fuck out cold. Whereas with Anderson, he's gonna like ham it the fuck up.
He's gonna
it's
dance.
Gonna look fucking weird.
He's gonna
gonna want it to look weird. Yeah,
he's gonna do the Wing Chun
Three
arms.
Stooges, fucking like spinning the fucking fist and trying to hit him with the jab.
We've seen him voluntarily
so it's gonna
go
look weird, and that's why I'm saying it because he's gonna point to it. It's gonna look weird, and I think the house of cards is gonna fall down.
Yeah,
as far as they show, like, oh, you guys are fucking jobbing everybody.
Yeah, and we've seen Anderson voluntarily go into the corner to do the fucking Muhammad Ali shit versus Chavez Jr. So yeah, I think that there's I'm gonna say it's not gonna happen. I have faith that it's not, but I think that you will have people, if that were to be the outcome, you will have people agreeing with your initial take that he's going out there to throw this fight. But there's a lot of dumb people in the world, so that's not going to be a surprise to me.
Yeah.
I'm fucking around, man. But yeah, I'm not a fan of Jake Paul either. I've said it plenty. I think it's kind of interesting what he's done for combat sports, and because I've listened to some of these guys that work with some of these bigger like media outlets and stuff, your MMA junkies and your MMA fighting and all that shit like that. And they've talked about like the numbers that they get for when there's a Jake Paul event or even just like Jake Paul news, like the amount of clicks and engagement that they get compared to everything else is just embarrassing.
No, that's what I'm saying.
And I've heard that about BKFC too, surprisingly.
If that goes away, like that, it's a ripple effect down the fucking chain. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So it's like, how much is there really invested into him continuing to do this, and how far back does that go? Like, to me, it's like there's more guys. There's like so many more guys going out there that are like hoping they can get a fight like this. Like almost every fighter now is like,
oh, look at Nate.
Who did it? Sam Alvey was fucking doing it.
Everybody.
Every fucking buddy does it. Yeah, everybody fucking does it.
As soon as they're free from the shackles of the UFC, they that's fucking number one. And
it's basically a fucking retirement plan that like they all hope they can get that golden ticket. And if Anderson just goes out and does what he should do, which is he's gonna stay on the outside, he's gonna jump in, he's gonna outpoint him, a couple of like big shots. Fuck him up to the body and just really embarrass him, then it's gonna look like, oh shit, like everybody can do that. And then where does the appeal go? But if you see fucking Anderson Silva get knocked the fuck out and everyone's like, oh my fucking god, and it's like on every Instagram account from ESPN to Bleacher Report to every fucking account, every fucking like we're fucking talking about it on our fucking podcast, which so
I got a question for you.
okay.
If Jake Paul loses to Anderson, whether it's well, I guess I shouldn't say whether it's legit or looks like fuckery, because that's nobody's going to be fucking like paying for that outcome.
This is going to be weird. This is going to be weird.
If Jake Paul loses to Anderson, as embarrassing as you can imagine, the loss to go, a knockout, whatever, do you think that actually hurts the Jake Paul versus Nate Diaz fight later on down the line?
It hurts every fight down the line because everybody just wants to see him lose. Everybody's like, "Was he gonna lose this time?" When I watched, I fucking got fucking roped in to the Tyron Woodley bullshit because I wanted to see Tyron Woodley knock him the fuck out, and I was like, I just want to see this fuck lose, and that's where the money is. Everybody wants to see him fucking lose, and he fucking knows that. Everybody knows that, and to think, I just don't.
I think we want to see him lose.
No, everybody does.
I think he has a huge fan base that wants to see him continue to handpick his opponents and beat old like washed up legends, and to see him piss off people like us. And I think that he has. I think there's a dollar. There's a bigger market for that.
If he went out, see, that's the thing for me. If he went out and legitimately, if this was a legit sanctioned real fucking fight and beat Anderson Silva, it would not make me mad. Not even in the slightest fucking. What makes me mad is he makes it the spectacle, and he makes it seem like this is a real fucking thing, and I'm really out here fucking doing this. And I get that he's out there training, dude. This guy is on the most insane amount of steroids, dude. This guy is taking fucking wild fucking steroids. Anderson's gonna take fucking crazy steroids to look good. Dude, it's wild. This shit is just a spectacle. That's what I don't like about it. That's just what I don't care for this kind of shit at all.
No, I agree. I don't need it in combat sports. I don't need this. I don't need the BKFC. I don't need any of these like fucking
I'd rather watch
shady
BKFC,
ass,
a legit BKFC fight, than watch this kind of shit.
But it's just because I see the same thing in BKFC, where I see, well, for one, the performativeness of it, like the bullshit, like pro wrestling like style antics, and like the stare downs and stuff like that, and people faking like they're gonna get into fights and stuff. But also, I see them like dangling this bullshit carrot in a bunch of has-been fighters, and I mean, there's plenty of guys going over there too who can make a nice career out of it. They probably won't have to rely on like UFC washouts for too much longer, because there are still going to be legit guys who are going to leave the UFC or any fucking MMA promotion. They don't even have to come straight from the UFC, who are still going to look at something like bare knuckle boxing and be like, I can have a go at that. I can have some success there. Like we just saw, I just saw John Dotson fight this past weekend for the BKFC fight. I saw his fight, and he ran through his opponent. I forget the name of the guy he was fighting.
John Dotson was so good when he was in MMA and like a title contender. He was fucking crazy.
So fast. And all that speed was 100% there and on display this past weekend too. So anyways, but yeah, I mean, I have less of a problem with bare knuckle boxing. It's not really for me. It's weird for me because I think to myself, like, why not just do all like no grappling MMA striking? Like, why limit it to boxing? And then also, let's stop with the bare knuckle bullshit. Like, it's the stupidest way to try and like make yourself seem edgier for like casual fans too. Like, why do you want there to be more likelihood of fighters breaking their hands? Let them put fucking gloves on and just strike. Like, all you're doing it. And the sad thing about it is, I think they like the amount of blood that they get. They like it because it causes more cuts, and to the dumb fan who doesn't know shit about fighting, that's entertainment, I guess.
Well, I guess, remember Rogan used to say like, you would get rid of so many injuries, and you would get rid of so many if you just let them fight bare knuckle. And then he saw it.
He thought fighters were smart.
And then he's like, oh, they can't be doing this. I did not. Yeah.
He thought fighters were smarter than they actually are. He thought like, well, if I have to fight without gloves, I'm obviously not going to punch as hard as I can because I don't want to break my hands. So I'm gonna what the fuck are you thinking? Of course they're going to punch as hard as they can,
No
dude.
gloves on a basketball court, you fucking retard.
And I like how he'd always be like, yeah, with these gloves that they give you in the UFC, like you could just punch the broadside of a barn and you wouldn't feel anything. So like,
yeah, dude, I've punched and I've had a fully hand wrapped and a 4-ounce like UFC glove, and it was like a collector's item type glove. Like it wasn't the shit that they give them. That shit fucking hurts, dude. And I've punched with the wrapped fucking like 12-ounce boxing glove
for your wrist too.
Yeah, dude, fuck, dude, it's like night and day. You have to like condition yourself to fight in those UFC gloves.
All right, I think we can call it there. I don't really have anything else to touch on for the UFC Fight Night Gane versus Tuivasa card. I will say, like, okay, not even to break a fight down, but just to tell anyone listening, if you're looking for something on the undercard to watch, don't miss the Nasruddin Imavov versus Joaquin Buckley fight. That's going to be a good one at middleweight. I don't know if there's any other fights that you want to throw a quick highlight out on. You mentioned Charles Jourdain.
Charles Jourdain versus Nathaniel Wood will be the fight of the night.
Ooh, he's calling fight of the night for that one. So, yeah, don't miss that. It's not as bad of a card as it looks like on paper. I'm just gonna start saying that from now on. So Brandon doesn't call me out.
I'm going to call you out. I will every single time.
All right, man. Cool. Well, we'll wrap it up there. If you're still listening, everybody, thank you for joining us once again. Please like, subscribe, comment, ring the bell on YouTube so that you get a notification anytime our new episodes go up, and you won't miss anything, and you will be the smartest guy in the room for every fight night. So until next time, Brandon, have a good night. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. We love you.